Hey everybody, this is just a quick guide at what I've got here. I had some time on my hands and I decided it would be a good opportunity to do a relume of some hands for my Seiko 4006s, of which I have probably too many than any one person needs. One of the typical problems with these hands is the loom tends to go bad. It gets black, it gets really soft, it falls out, it does all the things that you really don't want loom to do. And in this particular case, I decided to take 4 hands, 2 sets, one very thin set, one thicker set, and kind of walk through the process and show you how it turns out. Now, in this particular case, I've got some stills I took ahead of time, but I actually recorded as a test through my microscope with a digital camera arrangement, and that is what you see going on for the vast majority of this as I'm applying the loom. Now, in the first set of stills, I've got my befores, and you can see I've cleaned all the old loom out. The hands, they look worse under the microscope than they do in real life. You can see some scratches and corrosion, but the reality is once they're on the watch and once they're on your wrist, it's really hard to tell how beat up the hands are. I would like to have replated them, but that seems to be a challenge at best, and I'm still kind of shopping around for a good way to do that. But let's go ahead and get on with things here. So as I started, one of the things that became really apparent is I was trying to do this one-handed and not holding both hands on the oiler. And that's why you're going to see a little bit of jiggling. But I gotta say, the fact I'm holding my oiler with one hand and applying the loom. Now you can see as the loom's applied, it looks a little gloppy. You want that. You don't want it too running. Capillary action will move it around and get it to go into place. And when the loom dries, it will dry significantly thinner and flatter than what you see here. So as I go, I just kind of build up the sides, I bridge it a little bit, make sure it's on fairly thick. And by the time I get to the 4th hand and back to the 1st hand, the first one's dried enough where I can apply a second coat. This particular loom I bought as an experiment, and I'll have a link in the show notes as far as where I got it from. And I am using a very small, cheap oiler. I've got some very nice oilers I use for my day-to-day oiling of watch movements. These are something you pick up for like $6 off eBay. And while they work okay for oiling in a beginning state, they work even better for applying loom. There's 3 different sizes, but the vast majority of the time I'm using the smallest one to apply the loom. And you can see I'm just slowly applying it to the sides, working my way back and forth. I'm not going to talk through the whole video. There really isn't any point to it. I do show 4 different hands, so you get kind of a feel. I extend the loom past the end points or the start points. You can see right there I've applied it to the end, and I work my way around. And you'll see as I kind of smear it around and I kind of let it bridge, it'll fill in the gaps very nicely. I'm applying one side, and then I'll sometimes rotate the oiler to pick up a little bit of the loom that's on the other side, like I did right there. Just as a FYI, I'm using one of my little steel blocks with some Rodico on both sides to act as kind of like a bridge. The Rodico's got just enough stick to hold the hands in place while you kind of, apply the loom and maneuver things around without the hands falling off. The bridge allows me to do the loom without the face of the hand touching anything, so if it were to bow slightly on the other side before it dries, it's not going to touch anything like the steel surface and distort or become contaminated. This is one of the bigger hands on the 4006 Seikos, and you can see that the lume, it doesn't have any problem bridging across. You know, even on the small hands it goes very nicely. The big hands it works just fine. I would say a microscope is almost mandatory. Yes, you can probably do this with a loupe. I suspect older clockmakers and watch repair folks have done it with a loupe. I happen to wear glasses, and I find it much easier to use my microscope. I have a small screen attached to it, LCD screen, so it's like watching a small TV as I'm working, and I find that to be very, very useful and handy for me. I'm not struggling with the loupe, trying to keep it on my face, and glasses and all the rest that goes with it. And here we go with the final hand, just applying the last little bit of lume to it. They do typically require 2 coats. As it dries, it thins out, like I said, flattens out. And while it would work, you can see on that first hand, it's almost translucent. You can almost see through it. So typically what I would do is I put a second thicker coat on there, now that I actually have a bridge, and we'll go ahead and let it dry. And you might think, well, it's going to be too thick. It really isn't. This stuff flattens out to maybe, you know, a quarter of the thickness of when you first put it on wet. And I haven't had an instance yet where the lume is too thick for the hand and I have to redo it. I've had to redo it for other reasons, but that being excessively thick isn't one of them. And you can see here, applying the second one, and you can see it's see-through. You can see through it a little bit. And you're trying to prevent that. You want the hands to glow, ultimately. And this video is real time. This is how quickly this lume will flash off and allow you to do a second coat. Some people say wait. Patience is not my strongest point, so I try to move along as quickly as I can. And with some care, you can do it with the lume. And honestly, if I wanted to be absolutely perfect on this, I would wait probably 10 minutes and let it completely flash off. But you don't want to wait, I don't want to wait, so I'm just going for it, and it works. You can see I'll apply a couple dots and then I'll go and I'll smooth it out a bit. And we're back on the last hand. And I'm just going to go ahead and put it on. Make sure I've got plenty there so I've got a nice glow on the hands. Now keep in mind, this is not a lot of lume. So the glow, while it works, it will never be bright, bright. It's not tritium, it's not radium, and it's not some of the super glow product. I haven't been able to find that for a reasonable price. This is just a nice replacement lume that gets the job done. You can see it's already flattening out as it dries, and it's only been just a few minutes between coats. I'll put some stills in that show how the hands look when you flip them over.